Tuesday morning, I walked in 5 minutes late to a mandatory department meeting, coffee in one hand, badge in the other. I figured it was just another pointless check-in, fluorescent lights buzzing, plastic chairs in a half circle. Half the team was already there, quiet, stiff. Something felt off, but I didn't expect what hit me. Brady stood at the front, arms crossed, not smiling. "Your role's been eliminated, Keith. Effective immediately." Just like that. No build-up. No explanation. I blinked, thinking I misheard. "What?" He didn't repeat it, just nodded toward my desk. "There's a box waiting for you. Security will escort you out." For a second, no one moved. Not even a breath. 20 people in that room. Some I'd worked with for years, and not one said a single word. I scanned their faces. Dana wouldn't look at me. Vince suddenly needed to tie his shoe, and Alyssa stared straight at the floor like she was watching her own funeral. Brady didn't meet my eyes. He acted like I was already gone. No warning. No one-on-one, no write-up, just erased. I'd run 3 plants, stayed late, showed up early, fixed systems nobody else understood. Hell, half the time I trained the managers above me. But now, I was a line in a spreadsheet, deleted without a second thought. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I didn't say a word. I just stood there with my coffee still warm in my hand, like an idiot. Someone finally cleared their throat. Chairs scraped as people stood up, walked out, awkward and quiet like they were sneaking out of a crime scene. I headed back to my desk. Sure enough, there it was. A cardboard box, pre-packed. That's how I knew this wasn't about being late. They'd planned this. Inside, a framed photo of me and my kid at the plant picnic, the little custom wrench he made me in shop class, and a half-dead desk plant I'd been too busy to water. 6 years of my life boxed up like I was moving out of a dorm room. Security didn't say much, just followed me out, hand hovering near his belt like I might snap and go ballistic. I didn't. I kept my head up, walked past every fake-ass colleague without flinching. No one said goodbye. Not even Brady. I opened the door, stepped into the parking lot, and chucked the coffee straight into the trash. I sat in the truck with the AC on full blast, staring through the windshield like the world outside had stopped moving. The box sat on the passenger seat, taunting me. I gripped the steering wheel hard, but it didn't help. Then I snapped. I slammed my fist into the dash. Once, twice. I screamed loud enough to rattle the windows, some mix of rage and disbelief pouring out of my throat like poison. I'd kept that place running for 6 damn years, and they tossed me like a used rag. My knuckles split open on the third hit, but I didn't care. I just kept yelling. Eventually, I shut the truck off and went inside. Didn't turn on the lights, didn't eat. Just dropped the box on the kitchen counter and sat at the table with a beer I didn't remember opening. That silence, it was deafening. Around 6, the phone started buzzing. First, it was Todd from welding, then Rachel from the admin office. I let it ring, one after another. I didn't owe anyone a word. By 7:30, the company number popped up. I laughed and hit decline. At 8 sharp, the doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to look. I checked the peephole, and there he was. Ron Myers, Chief Operating Officer. Dress shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled. Guy looked like he hadn't slept in a week. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "Keith, we need to talk," he said, breathless like he jogged to the porch. "We made a mistake. The plant's offline. Nothing's working." I didn't say a word, just stared at him until he looked down. "Please," I left him out there for a minute. Not to be dramatic, I just wanted him to feel it. Then I walked inside. He followed like a kicked dog. He saw the box on the counter, saw the photos, the wrench, my kid's handwriting on a sticky note. He swallowed hard. "All 3 plants," he said, voice shaking. "They're down. We don't know what's wrong." "You sure?" I said, cracking another beer. "I thought the new guys had it handled." He sat down without being asked, hands clasped like he was about to pray. "We tried the usual resets. The sensors won't talk to the PLCs, the robotics arms are frozen. Even the line controllers are acting up. Nobody knows what to do." I took a sip. "You still paying Brady to run things?" He didn't answer that. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So, let me get this straight. You canned the one guy who knew how to stitch that Frankenstein system together, and now you're shocked the monster died on the table." He nodded, eyes on the floor. "You just realized what I've been fixing behind the scenes, haven't you?" He looked up. "Yes." I let that hang in the air, watched the realization settle into his bones. He pulled out his phone. "We'll pay you. Whatever you want, just, please, help us get back online." I shook my head slowly. "You don't even know what I did. You never asked. I know that now, he said, desperate. We need you. I took a long breath. My hand was still bleeding from punching the dash, knuckles raw and sore. I looked at him, then at the beer in my hand, then back. Not tonight. He started to speak again, but I cut him off. You had your shot, I said. Come back tomorrow. I'll think about it. Then I walked to the door, opened it, and waited. He stood, hesitated, then finally stepped outside. I shut it behind him without another word. The next morning, Ron was parked outside my house at 7:30, suit jacket folded over the passenger seat, 2 coffees in hand like that was gonna smooth things over. I didn't invite him in, I met him on the porch. He didn't waste time. Nobody knows how your systems work, not even Brady. We're dead in the water. I leaned on the railing, let the silence stretch. My job title said maintenance supervisor, I finally said. But I haven't supervised anything in years. You know that. He nodded, like he was ready to confess to the priest. I've been patching together 3 generations of busted-ass equipment with code I had to write from scratch. No manuals, no updates. Just trial, error, and 0 budget. He looked wrecked. I didn't know. No, you didn't ask. He started pacing the porch. We brought in 2 consultants yesterday. They took 1 look and said scrap everything. Start fresh. I snorted. $3 million for brand new machinery, minimum. Another year to get it installed, trained, debugged. You don't have that kind of time. He shook his head. Production's already 2 days behind. Orders are backing up. We've got penalties in our vendor contracts. We're burning cash by the hour. I crossed my arms. You never even gave me a team. I know. No recognition, no budget. No idea what I was doing after hours to keep those plants running. He looked at me, exhausted. So tell me now, what were you doing? I walked over to his car, opened the back door, and pulled out a coffee. Every part you thought was fixed. I custom-coded the logic myself. PLCs didn't match. I built translation layers, legacy sensors failing. I wired backups through spare ports, half your parts database. That was built in my garage. He blinked. Your system's not in the cloud, Ron. It's in my head. He nodded, humbled. Come back. Name your salary. Anything? I laughed and took a sip. You think this is about money? He looked like a kid caught cheating on a test. I'm sorry. No, you're not, I said. You're panicking. He didn't argue, just stood there, breathing through his nose like he wanted to scream. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I'll call you in the morning. He lit up. Keith, seriously, thank you. I didn't waste time getting comfortable. I walked straight through Redwood's lobby at 4 p.m. Sharp, badge deactivated, visitor sticker crooked on my chest, and every eye tracking me like I was a ghost with a grudge. But this time, I wasn't there to belong. I was there to bill. Security gave me a half-assed nod. Brady peeked over his cubicle like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't look at him. I was already past him by the time his mouth opened. I headed straight to the plant floor, clipboard in one hand, tablet in the other, and went to work. Ron met me by the break room. No handshake. You're gonna fix this? He asked. You already paid me, I said. You tell me. I pulled out the checklist I'd written that morning over breakfast with Tom. That breakfast was short but serious. We met at a diner on Route 30, the kind of place where the coffee's always burnt and the waitresses call you Hun. Tom slid into the booth and didn't even order food. So, he said, you finally ready? I'm not looking for a job, I told him. I'm starting a company. I bring the clients. You help with admin, tech, payroll. The stuff I don't have time to figure out. I handle the legacy work. Old machines, dying systems, clients nobody else wants. Tom grinned like I'd just pitched him the winning lottery ticket. I'm in. Been waiting on this call for 5 years. We shook on it before the waitress brought the toast. From there, I moved fast. Registered Hartley systems before lunch. Bought the domain name, stood up a quick website, set up a business number. By 8 p.m., the contract hit Ron's inbox. By 10, he called. This feels like blackmail. No, I said. This is what it costs to fix what you broke. Next morning, the wire hit my account. 80 hours up front. Now I was back in the factory, and they were paying me 4 times what I made last week, just to talk. I walked the entire production floor, talked to operators, poked through panels, ran diagnostics with scripts I'd written in my basement 3 years ago. Everything was jammed up from the top down. Sensors misfiring, robots stuck in boot loops, PLC logic scrambled because someone had tried to update things without knowing what the hell they were touching. By 6, I had half the diagnostics mapped and a 5-day recovery plan drafted. I called Tom on the way home. We're live, I said. Already? They're in deep. This won't be a one-off. That night, I pulled up a list of old vendors I used to troubleshoot with. I made calls, sent emails, laid the groundwork. If Redwood needed this much help, there were 10 more companies just like them, clinging to obsolete machines with no one left who understood how they worked. By the end of the week, Tom had already onboarded a project manager and set up a shared drive. Hartley Systems wasn't a logo anymore. It was a business, my business, and it felt right. For the first time in years, I wasn't putting out someone else's fires. I was building something real. When I showed up to Redwood the next Monday, I walked right past Brady again. He flinched when I nodded at him. Good. That afternoon, I pulled Ron into a side office and laid out the full repair plan. Deadlines, roles, risk factors, backups. He looked at the whiteboard like it was magic. "You really did all this by yourself?" he asked. "No," I said. "I did it for you, and you ignored it." He didn't have a comeback. I handed him the signed work agreement and walked back out onto the floor. The factory floor was a mess. Absolute chaos. Cables hanging out of open panels. Diagnostic laptops everywhere, none of them showing anything useful. A half-dozen guys in branded polos stood around staring at machines like they were trying to will them to life. One guy was reading a manual upside down. I asked, "Who's in charge here?" A kid, couldn't have been older than 22, raised his hand halfway. Me? I'm shadowing plant ops this week." I almost laughed. I grabbed a dry erase marker, walked to the nearest whiteboard, and wrote one line in all caps. "If you don't touch machines or write code, get out." Then I turned to the room. "Anyone here who's not fixing something or running tests, leave. Now." They all just stood there, so I raised my voice. "Out." That did it. Within 20 seconds, the place cleared. Even the new plant manager left, eyes wide. I didn't care if I stepped on egos. I didn't have time for slow learners or politics. When it was quiet, I turned to the remaining 3 techs. Name, experience, and what you actually know how to do. Go. They ran through it quick. One was an old automation guy from another facility. The other 2 were just decent with hardware, but clueless on the patchwork systems I'd built. Good enough for now. I pulled up my scripts and back-end logic on a monitor and got to work. My fixes weren't documented. Nobody had ever asked. I stayed late for 6 years, patching those lines together with spit, zip ties, and hand-coded logic. While they were all at happy hour or wasting budget on consultants, I was down in the pit, making old motors talk to outdated controllers and salvaging production with 30-year-old hardware. By hour 4, the 3 guys were sweating and quiet, just watching. I cleared the whiteboard and rewrote their entire workflow from scratch, machine by machine, system by system, dependencies, quirks, fail-safes. Everything I'd held together by muscle memory and caffeine. Even the plant manager came back in, arms crossed, eyes darting across the whiteboard like it was written in code, which, honestly, it kinda was. One of the techs asked, "Why didn't we know this?" I shrugged. "You didn't want to." The room got real still. Over the next 10 days, I ran that place like a war zone. We rebuilt the code layer by layer. I traced cable faults by hand, documented signal pathways, replaced sensors nobody even remembered existed. I reprogrammed fail-safes, mapped out device IDs, and fixed logic loops that were corrupting outputs every 3rd cycle. Most of the tools I used weren't in any manual. They were scripts I'd built at home, because Redwood wouldn't buy the software. I trained the 3 sharpest guys to run my tools, walked them through every single config file, taught them how to troubleshoot with their own brains instead of manuals. By the end of the first week, they were diagnosing problems before I pointed them out. By day 10, they were fixing minor bugs without calling me over. I didn't handhold. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I made them work for it, because if they were gonna inherit my systems, they had to be ready to own them. Every night, I emailed Ron a progress report. Simple. Bullet points, no fluff. I didn't take questions. I sent him the updated system map on day 11. He called me 10 minutes later. "This is incredible," he said. "It's elegant." I didn't reply. I just said, 3 more days. After that, you're on your own." He paused. Understood. On day 14, I walked in with 2 binders, 1 hard copy of full system documentation, and 1 backup set of USB drives with everything I'd built, config files, code, layouts, training material. I dropped them on the project manager's desk. "That's it," I said. "Keep the lines running. Don't screw it up." He stood, reached out to shake my hand. "Keith, I mean it. Thank you." I shook once, firm. "You're welcome. Just remember what happens when you ignore the guy keeping the lights on." Then I turned around and walked out without looking back. The morning after I walked out of Redwood, my inbox exploded. Apparently, word had gotten around fast. Vendors, mid-level engineers, even a VP from a parts supplier I hadn't talked to in years. They'd all heard about how I'd brought 3 plants back from the dead in under 2 weeks. By the end of that week, I had 2 more contracts on the table. Both were legacy factories. One a metal stamping outfit in Cleveland, the other a food packaging facility down near Harrisburg. Both had ancient equipment patched together with chewing gum and panic. Exactly my kind of mess. Tom and I were barely keeping up. We had systems to build, contracts to manage, travel schedules, billing, all while I was still crawling around under old machines with grease on my jeans. So, I hired 2 guys, Brian and Jalen. Both had just gotten let go from a robotics firm that went belly up. Sharp as hell. Brian was pure logic, brilliant with ladder code. Jalen was a hardware whisperer, the kind of guy who could look at a board and know what part was bad by smell alone. First thing I told them was, I don't do corporate games. You work hard, I pay fair. No fake meetings, no ego, no layers of BS. They both nodded like they'd been waiting years to hear that. We were off to the races. By week 4, we had 4 full clients and a 5th circling. That's when the call came in. I was on site in Pittsburgh, checking a motor controller that kept locking up, when my phone buzzed. Redwood. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. It was Ron. Keith, he said, voice a little too upbeat. We'd like to make you an offer. I didn't say anything. A full-time CTO position, competitive salary, stock options, full package. We want you back in-house. Lead our automation rebuild from the inside. I leaned against a forklift and stared at the stained ceiling tiles. You already had me, I said. We made a mistake, he admitted. Let us make it right, I smirked. You already did. He paused. What do you mean? You made me start my own thing. That was the best thing you ever did for me. He didn't have a response. I added, Redwood's not my world anymore. You're just a client, one of many. He let out a breath. Can we at least get priority scheduling? Nope, I said. You get the same treatment as everyone else. I take your calls Tuesdays 10 a.m. to noon. That's it. A beat of silence. Then quietly, understood. By month 3, Redwood was one of 6 clients. And honestly, not even the biggest one. We were picking up jobs from places I'd never heard of. Aerospace suppliers, custom plastics, a factory in Missouri that built parts for mining rigs with machines older than I was. Everyone had the same story. Their systems were failing, no one knew how they worked, and consultants kept telling them to junk it all and start over. We gave them another option. Brian built diagnostic dashboards that actually worked. Jalen started designing custom breakout boards for sensors no one made anymore. And I stayed on the road, doing what I'd always done, just without anyone looking over my shoulder or screwing up my fixes 2 days later. I stopped checking in on Redwood, didn't care what Brady was doing, didn't want to know. They sent emails. We replied when we could. They asked for meetings. We gave them 30 minutes once a week. No more loyalty. No more scrambling to prove myself. Just results. We showed up, fixed the problem, collected the check, and moved on. Things were rolling. Too well, apparently. Because Redwood decided to remind me they still had lawyers. It started with a letter. Thick envelope, firm logo at the top, legal-sounding crap in bold font. Cease and desist over a potential contract I had pending with one of their competitors, a control system supplier based in New Jersey. According to Redwood's legal team, me doing business with their direct rival created a conflict of interest. Their claim? My work at Redwood gave me access to proprietary methods that I could unfairly leverage. I read it once, snorted, and tossed it on the table. Tom said, "You want me to handle this?" "No," I said. "I want them to see my face when they realize they screwed with the wrong guy." We set up a meeting at Redwood's HQ, conference room on the 5th floor, long glass table, pitchers of water no one touched. Their attorney showed up with 2 assistants. Ron walked in 10 minutes late, already sweating. I brought my lawyer, Sheila, former Navy JAG, smart as hell, absolutely ruthless in a room like this. We didn't even sit down. I walked to the head of the table, tossed my own folder down, and said, "Let's cut the crap. You don't want this in court." The lead attorney blinked. "We're simply protecting—" "I've got your emails," I said, loud enough that the whole room stiffened. "Want me to go public?" Sheila stayed silent, just watched them. They all froze. The color drained from Ron's face like someone pulled the plug. I didn't have anything. Not really. But I didn't need to. Bluffing only works if they are guilty. And Ron looked like he'd already crapped his pants. He cleared his throat. Let's maybe take a step back. I leaned in. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop the cease and desist. You're going to sign a 12-month non-interference agreement, and then you're going to issue a public letter stating that Hartley Systems is a valued vendor whose services are in no way tied to Redwood's internal systems. That's excessive, their lawyer started. It's non-negotiable, I cut in. Ron glanced around the table, then down at the folder in front of him. He nodded, slow. We'll sign, he said. An hour later, the papers were done. Sheila walked out holding all 4 signed copies like a trophy. That same afternoon, I called the rival company, Gentry Dynamics. Redwood blinked, I told them. We're green-lit. They signed a 6-month contract that made Redwood's look like chump change. Bigger scope, higher rate, and no legal baggage. Tom popped a bottle of bourbon that night. I didn't even feel like celebrating. I was too fired up. See, this wasn't just business anymore. Redwood thought they could flex their old power. Thought the guy who used to carry their mess on his back would stay quiet just because they had a legal team and a logo. But that's not how this works. You don't squeeze the guy who saved your business, especially not after he learns what he's worth. By month 6, Hartley Systems wasn't just a hustle anymore. It was a full-blown machine. We had 22 employees across 2 offices, one in Lancaster, one in Akron. Our roster looked like a misfit squad of engineers, tinkerers, ex-plant managers, and a few robotics guys who hated wearing ties. I didn't care what school you went to or how pretty your resume looked. I cared if you could walk into a busted-up control room and make it breathe again. That's what we were known for, fixing the unfixable. Old steel mills in the Midwest, food processors down south, aerospace suppliers with half-digital, half-analog lines built in the 80s that no one dared touch. We went where the big firms wouldn't, where the problems were too ugly, too custom, too buried in dust and half-baked legacy code. We showed up, rolled our sleeves, and fixed it. Redwood, they were still hanging on, still a client, but now they made up less than a quarter of our total revenue, and they didn't love that. Ron called me one afternoon while I was on site at a textile plant in Kentucky. The heat index was over 100. My phone was slick with sweat, and I already knew he wasn't calling just to say thanks. We're paying premium prices, he started. We expect a little more FaceTime from you, Keith. I didn't miss a beat. You're getting exactly what you paid for. We want Keith Hartley, he snapped, not just his staff. I leaned against a stack of pallet-wrapped servo motors and wiped my forehead with the back of my glove. My staff is me, I said. They're trained by me. They use tools I built. They fix what I used to fix. Yeah, but no but. You'll get who we send or you'll get nobody. He went quiet. I knew the game. They wanted the old version of me. The guy who used to bend over backward, who'd pull double shifts and patch problems after midnight just to keep their numbers clean. That guy didn't exist anymore. This version, he sent invoices with penalties for late payment. They backed down. Again. From that point on, we didn't hear much noise from Redwood. They got their fixes like everyone else. Assigned slots, clean reports, no hand-holding. Meanwhile, we kept scaling. Tom handled operations. Brian and Jalen led the advanced systems team. We brought in a business dev guy named Matt, who used to sell aerospace automation. Dude could close a deal in 3 calls flat. I stayed in the field, not every day, but enough to keep my hands dirty and the systems sharp. We started getting referrals from inside the big manufacturers. Whispers about Hartley Systems being the black ops team for broken lines. One client called us the factory paramedics. I liked that. We weren't the biggest name, but we were the ones who got called when the $1 million integrators failed. Our backlog hit 3 months, then 4. We turned clients away if their timelines didn't match. Not because we were arrogant, because we knew what our time was worth. And I made damn sure my team knew it too. Every Friday, we had a short call. Wins, issues, contracts. I told them the same thing every week. We solve what others won't touch. We fix what's broken and walk away without a mess. And they delivered. That's what Redwood still didn't get. They kept thinking this was personal, that I was playing hard to get or punishing them. But the truth, it wasn't about them at all. They were just another company on the spreadsheet now, one of many. I was in the middle of reviewing a proposal for a cement plant in Iowa when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Normally, I let unknown calls go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. Keith Hartley, I said. This is Lisa Daly, the voice replied, chair of the board at Redwood. I stood up without realizing it. She didn't waste time. We want to acquire Hartley Systems. Full buyout. You'd come in-house, take the CTO position, and oversee all modernization across our global operations. I didn't say a word. We're prepared to offer $25 million. That was the moment I sat down again. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I knew right then how far we'd come. I thanked her for the call, said I'd talk to my team, and hung up. 5 minutes later, I called an emergency meeting. Brian, Jalen, Tom, and Rachel, our ops lead, sat around the conference table, dead quiet as I relayed the offer. I read it straight from the email that followed. No guessing. It was real. $25 million, I said. Buyout, clean handover. I become CTO at Redwood. Rachel was the first to speak. It's a hell of a number. Tom leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Yeah, but it's not what we built this for. Brian nodded. We walk away from this. What do we get? A fancy title and a leash? Jalen tapped the table with his pen. You'd be back in their glass tower, taking orders. We'd all be unemployed. I looked around the room. These were the people who helped build Hartley Systems from a name on paper to a company with real weight in the industry. We weren't just solving problems. We were setting the new standard. I said, I'm not selling us out, but we're not burning the bridge either. We agreed to hold our line, together. 2 weeks later, I walked into Redwood's glass tower in downtown Philly, this time not as a fired employee, not even as a vendor. I was the founder of the company they couldn't replace. Lisa greeted me in a sleek gray suit, handshake firm, eyes sharp. Glad you came. I followed her into the boardroom. All windows, all polished wood and metal. A carafe of water, 2 glasses. Nothing else on the table. She started soft. We believe in your talent. We want you to lead Redwood into its next chapter. I slid a folder across the table. Read that. She opened it, flipped through a few pages, then looked up. This isn't a sale, she said. No, I said. It's a new contract. Keith, you can't buy us, but we'll keep working with you, on our terms. She narrowed her eyes. Is this personal? I met her stare. It was. Not anymore. Now it's just business. She glanced back at the contract, lips pressed tight. I stood. We'll keep you in our rotation. Same billing, same terms, but Hartley Systems stays independent. Your team could have been part of something bigger, she said. I walked to the door. We are something bigger, I said. That's why you called. And then I left, without waiting for her reply. A year to the day after they fired me in front of the whole department, I stood outside our brand new headquarters, 8,000 square feet of brick, glass, and steel, and cut the ribbon myself. Big crowd, full staff. Some clients flew in just for the open house. We had catering, banners, local press. I barely heard any of it. All I could see was that view. Our top floor overlooked the river, full wraparound windows, clean lines, natural light. It felt earned. We had 40 staff now. Hardware, software, logistics, ops, all tight, all loyal. We were running contracts with 2 Fortune 500s, had another 6 in the pipeline, and a waitlist stretching into the spring. Redwood, still a client, still paying. But now they were just another name in a Monday spreadsheet. I assigned their work to our junior team. Nothing malicious, just a little reminder. They didn't get special treatment anymore. I didn't take their calls, didn't need to. That afternoon, I was in my office, sleeves rolled, finalizing specs for a retrofit job down in Texas, when Nate, my operations lead, knocked once and came in holding a flower arrangement. Delivery just came in, he said, setting it on the table. There was a card tucked inside. White, simple. Congrats, respect earned. Lisa Daly. I stared at it for a second, then laughed. Nate raised an eyebrow. You want me to toss it? Nah, I said. Put it in the front lobby. He gave me a short nod and walked out with the vase. I turned back to my laptop. The truth is, the best revenge wasn't revenge. It was building something so solid, so untouchable, they'd never get their hooks in me again. What would you have done if a company fired you, then tried to buy you back? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.